Now, more than ever, we see the devastating effects a pandemic can have on our very fragile food system. COVID-19 has led to a dramatic loss of human life, and not just from the illness. Tens of millions of people are at risk of falling into extreme poverty, while the numbers of undernourished people, currently at 690 million, is set to increase by a further 132 million by the end of this year. Over months, as half of the world shut down and borders closed, there were images of panic buying, empty supermarket shelves, and mile-long queues at food banks. There were images of huge piles of wasted food and farmers left with rotting crop. Not only was there a shortage of some foods, but a wastage of others. How could that be? How are we throwing away food when there are people going to bed hungry during this global pandemic? Food that was grown using water, soil and chemicals that also had an effect directly on our climate. The $5 trillion global food and agriculture sector relies heavily on soil and water. And if we carry on the way we are, we will run out of both. Only 3.1% of the planet has arable soil for us to grow crops. Even that small part is slowly disappearing due to climate change. And then we have water. The UN estimates that demand for water will outstrip supply by 40% by the year 2030, while access to water will be further impacted by extreme weather events like stronger storms and longer droughts. In East Africa, people are facing a triple threat of heavy rains and swarms of locusts, as well as COVID-19. Food prices are rising globally, and on one hand we have the undernourished, and on the other an obesity crisis. We need to reconsider how we produce, process, market, consume and handle the waste of food. We are all aware of how a move towards a plant-based diet and reduction of meat has a positive impact on the climate. Total food waste in the UK has fallen over the past 3 years, but we still need to do more. I could carry on and talk about how the World Economic Forum has predicted that by 2050, the agriculture and food sector is expected to produce half of all greenhouse gas emissions. Just yesterday, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change launched the Race to Zero, a global campaign to rally leadership and support from businesses, cities, regions and investors for a healthy, resilient, zero carbon recovery that prevents future threats, creates decent jobs and unlocks inclusive, sustainable growth. Organisations and governments are using innovative solution-driven ideas to reach their goal. There is the introduction of vertical farming and the increase in meat substitutes. Impossible Foods stated that they have a beef burger alternative that produces 89% less greenhouse gas emissions, uses 87% less water and 96% less land. Technology is advancing, but more still needs to be done. You could sit there and blame organisations, food producers and governments for not doing enough. But in blame, there are no solutions. Create a solution-driven learning mindset and take action. And that is what today is all about. It's about you making a commitment to action, leaving here today and making a change. So what can you do? We need to start by creating less food waste, and this has to begin with our purchases. Only buying what we need instead of stocking up in fear that shelves will be empty again. A meal plan will ensure that less food is wasted and any vegetables that are left over at the end of the week can be used up in a soup and fruit included in smoothies. Just as we are whole, so are any plants. Use all parts of the fruit and vegetables where possible. We throw away a lot of what we think is inedible. Be creative with your food. Just yesterday on TV, Nigella was making a curry from banana skin. And if during these times you find that you have ended up with more than you need, then there are a few things you can do. Share the food with food banks. Share meals and food with your neighbours and community. There are great apps that will help you do this. And finally, make the meals and freeze them. But how do you make sure that your food purchases have less of an impact on the climate? engage with food companies and other businesses that heavily depend on natural resources and ask them to fully disclose their land use impact and commit to meaningful certification programs. Support conservation groups that are active in protecting and restoring degraded land and are vocal in promoting the uptake of net zero. Reduce your meat consumption, create a compost heap, grow your own fruit and veg. Now is the ideal time to plant blueberries and raspberries ready for the spring. And think about where your food has come from. Visit local farmers markets or your local allotment where individuals will happily sell what they have grown. Buy those potatoes that aren't cosmetically perfect, those wonky carrots and those not so perfect apples. Embrace the differences in food just as we embrace the differences in each other. We have known for a long time the effects our production, transportation and consumption of food has had on our climate. But we have only just discovered as individuals how fragile our food system is, and it has just taken a global pandemic to make us realise this. Thank you.